If you ever hear something moving the same way the trees do, slow, patient, like a memory turning in its sleep, turn around. I didn't. The first thing I remember is the smell. Wet earth and old smoke, as if someone had left a bonfire burning in another life. It sat under the canopy like a bruise. I walked into that smell, thinking I was going for a shortcut, a stupid route home after too many beers and a phone with a dead battery. The path narrowed, and the light went thin. The moon was a coin through a sieve. Branches knitted overhead until the world was only my boots and a narrow tunnel of black. I told myself a forest is a forest, trees, moss, an occasional owl. But even then, my mouth tasted metallic, like the night had teeth. At first, it was small things. A snapped twig off the path, a skitter of something too light to be a raccoon. I thought it was nerves, town stories stretching into my bones. Then the sounds grew organized, the way a chorus finds rhythm. Leaves scraped in a cadence that matched my heartbeat. Twice I heard breathing that wasn't my own, low, wet, just behind me, then nothing but the wind pretending to be a thing. I stopped, more out of habit than bravery. My breath hung visible and ridiculous in front of me, fog mingling with the darker air. When I looked up, the trees were like rows of watching people, their bare fingers reaching for whatever passed through. Shadows pooled between trunks and did not behave like shadows. They clung to the bark, as if listening for names. My skin prickled. Every hair became a warning flag. The first real oddity was the silence. Not the pleasant hush of a sleeping place, but a focused silence that cleaned out all the usual forest noises, the chirp, the drip, the distant car, until I could hear the blood in my ears. It felt obscene, like someone had put their palm over the world and pressed. In that silence, I heard a sound that should not belong to a place like this. A rasping, a dry rattle, as if something had run its fingernails along a skull. It wasn't close, and it wasn't far. It was everywhere, threaded through the leaves and the air. I moved again, because standing felt like admitting defeat. My feet sank into the loam, and blossoms of decayed things brushed my calves. Twice more, I thought I saw a figure between the trunks, tall, too thin, but every time I blinked it resolved into trees or the sway of branches. Light plays tricks. I've told myself that 100 times since. But there was a geometry to the darkness, a suggestion of shoulders and a head like a void with bone in it. When I adjusted my eyes, whatever it was had shifted, closer by half a heartbeat. Panic is not loud. It is a taut wire inside your chest, humming. I told myself to breathe, to count. I counted to 10, to 30. The forest answered with a whisper that sounded almost like words, nothing coherent, just syllables scraped on dead leaves. My phone, when I dug for it, was a useless stone. I had no light, no signal, only the way the night looked when you know you are not alone. And then the static started, tiny at first, a crackle like an old radio in the distance. It threaded the air, a hiss that shouldn't exist in a place without wires. The static grew teeth. It made the hairs on my arms stand straighter. I could almost make out shapes in it, interruptions of dark that felt deliberate, like someone rearranging the shadows to spell something I could not yet read. I kept walking because the alternative was to stand and be read. Every step felt like an answer to a summons I had never agreed to. The path split and refused to be useful, the trees rearranging themselves like a crowd pressing in. Somewhere deeper in the woods, something moved with intent. And for the first time, I understood that the forest was not empty. It was listening. The deeper I went, the less the forest seemed like a place and more like a throat swallowing me whole. The trees leaned inward, their branches hooked like ribs. Each step forward felt rehearsed, as if I wasn't walking by choice but following a script written long before I entered. The static didn't fade. It grew. It crawled along my skin, a prickling itch that made my muscles tense. The sound wasn't random anymore. It stuttered in pulses, irregular but deliberate, almost like a voice trying to tear through distortion. Every so often, it spiked into something sharp, a sound that wasn't quite human but close enough to force my body to freeze. The crackle became breath, then laughter. Low, wet, and too near my ear. I spun around, certain I'd see someone standing there. Nothing, just the smear of shadows, the skeletal silhouettes of trees. But the air was thicker, as though it had been occupied a second earlier. That's when I saw it properly. At first, my mind tried to translate it into something familiar, an oddly shaped tree, a trick of the dark. But the longer I looked, the less room there was for lies. It was tall, impossibly tall, with shoulders hunched beneath a coat that looked more like rotted fabric than cloth. Its face, its face, was a skull, but not bone-white. It was darker, pitted, a mask of something starved. Black sockets stared without eyes, and where a mouth should have been was a row of broken teeth grinding together, scraping like stone. It didn't move at first. It just tilted its head, as though deciding what kind of thing I was. My legs wanted to run. My throat wanted to scream. Neither obeyed. I stood, caught in its stare, until the forest itself seemed to shift behind it. The trees bent unnaturally, their outlines rippling as though the figure dragged reality down around it. Then it moved. Not with steps, not at first. It seemed to twitch forward in jerks, as if pieces of it were skipping frames. One instant, it was 10 feet away. The next, 5. The sound followed, static swelling, overlapping with whispers in languages my brain couldn't hold. The voices weren't outside. They slithered inside my skull, filling the hollow spaces with fragments of words. You're already here. You've always been here. The forest remembers. I forced my body to break free and stumbled backward, lungs tearing for air. My hands scraped against bark, splinters biting deep into my palms. The figure advanced, no longer pausing, its hands long and claw-like, dragging the dirt as if it wanted to carve its way toward me. I bolted. Branches whipped across my face, tearing skin. The forest didn't allow straight paths. It folded and spiraled, each turn bringing me back to where I swore I had just been. Behind me, the thing followed. Not running, but arriving. Always arriving. The sound of its teeth grinding echoed through the static. At some point I realized I was bleeding, a shallow cut across my arm, sticky and warm. The air changed with it, grew heavier, hungrier. The whispers swelled, savoring my blood like an offering. Every shadow was a mouth, every tree trunk carried the shape of a figure, waiting to step free. And still, it was behind me. Close enough now that I could feel its breath, or what passed for breath, dragging cold across the back of my neck. I ran until my body betrayed me, collapsing onto the damp ground. The smell of rot rose up, clinging to my nose and tongue. As I forced myself to lift my head, I realized the ground wasn't earth at all. It was bones. Old, brittle, shattered bones, crushed into the soil like gravel. The forest had been feeding for a long, long time, and I was next in line. When I hit the ground, the air itself seemed to shudder. The static howled in my ears, filling every nerve, every thought. I wanted to move, but my body was led, pinned beneath an invisible weight that pressed harder with each breath. My palms sank deeper into the brittle remains beneath me, splinters of bone slicing my skin, grinding into flesh. Every snap echoed like a scream. I forced my head up, and it was there. No longer distant, no longer a suggestion among the trees. It stood directly before me, its frame blotting out the scant light that filtered through the canopy. The skull face leered down, jaw trembling in a silent rattle, as if savoring the moment. Its hands dragged the ground, claws curling and uncurling like a grotesque rhythm. And then it crouched. Its movement wasn't natural. The bones in its body cracked too loud, too deliberate, as if each one shattered and reformed with every bend. Its face hovered inches from mine, and the sockets weren't empty anymore. They were full of black, writhing shapes, tiny figures twisting and pressing against the void, their limbs scratching at the inside of its skull. The smell that poured from it was unbearable, damp earth, mold, and something sweet, almost like rotten fruit. It didn't speak with a mouth, it spoke with everything. The trees groaned in unison, the ground vibrated beneath me, and inside my head, a voice slithered through. You were called, you walked willingly. The forest keeps what enters. I tried to scream, but my voice was swallowed, pulled straight from my throat into the static. My body convulsed as the shadows around me thickened, rising from the forest floor like smoke made solid. They clung to my arms, my chest, pulling me down into the carpet of bones. Every breath became a struggle against the weight of centuries pressing onto my ribs. Still, I fought. Nails clawed into the soil, tearing skin and muscle as I tried to drag myself free. My vision flickered, black at the edges, but I saw the outlines of others in the trees. Dozens, maybe hundreds, pale faces emerging from the bark itself. Their mouths hung open in silent screams, their eyes hollow but burning with recognition. They had walked here too. They had tried to leave, and they had failed. The creature's hand closed around my wrist, impossibly cold, so cold it burned. It leaned closer, teeth grinding, and I felt my pulse falter under its grip. The voice in my head grew clearer, sharper, like it no longer had to fight through static. You belong to the forest now. In that moment, something in me broke. I don't know if it was courage or madness, but I wrenched free, tearing my skin down to the bone as I ripped my arm from its claws. I stumbled, half blind, crashing through the trees with no sense of direction, just the primal urge to escape. The forest bent and twisted, but somehow, I spilled out into the open road, collapsing onto the asphalt beneath a thin slice of moonlight. Silence. No static, no whispers, just my own ragged breathing and the faint hum of the world returning. I never went back. I never told anyone the full story, not like this, because deep down, I know the truth. The forest didn't let me go. It followed. Even now, when I close my eyes, I hear the static crackle. I feel the cold breath on my neck, and I know it's waiting. It always waits.
Subscribe to Horror Story Bar.